Well, good afternoon. Welcome along to the EVS Tech Dynamics panels. We've got two for you this afternoon. At 4 o'clock, cloud, green or grey. But we're starting off now with our first panel, AI and storytelling. You're not alone. AI has calculated that by the end of the average visit for the average delegate at IBC this year, they will be exposed, either seeing or hearing, the term AI 3,712 times. Actually, I made that up, but that is the point, because so much of what we hear about AI just feels plausible, even if quite a lot of it is sensationalist. But people seem quite prepared to believe most of it. We get bombarded with the news all of the time. AI and the truth have an interesting relationship, and I'm not just talking about generative and deep fakes, but we will touch on that, obviously, and that's an issue. But there's actually no single truth about what AI is, what it can do, or where it's going. And the truth is we don't know. And that's creating fear. So we'll talk about that too. And then there's trust. What would you trust AI to do? I spoke to one of Europe's leading AI professors as part of preparing for this panel. We've got some big brains here, so I had to do my homework. And he's been working in the field for decades. So I had a simple question for him. And you can have a think about this question as you relax on your flight home from IBC. My question to this European AI expert was, if an aeroplane's autopilot could be considered a form of AI? He paused for a couple of seconds, long enough for me to consider a different way to introduce this session. And then he simply said, yes, of course it is. So you have been trusting AI for many years already. Lots to consider. Thankfully, we've got an expert panel to help us untangle all of this. So I'll do a quick round of introductions first. First of all, Anshul Kapoor, Head of Media Broadcast Solutions at Google Cloud. Larissa Görner, CTO of Proximus Media House. Darren Long, Sports Technology Integration Project Lead at Warner Brothers Discovery. Not sure how you get that on a card. And Floriane Magera, Innovation Engineer at EVS. So you're all very welcome. Thank you for coming along. Let's just find out, first of all, because you're all going to have slightly different opinions and takes, let's just find out where you're coming from, first of all. So let's just start off, starting with you, Anshul. Very briefly, well, I think we've all heard of Google, but what do you do and what does your division do specifically? Quick overview.
Thanks so much for having me. At Google Cloud, we work in media companies around the world, helping them understand how cloud can benefit their workflows. So that is my role in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, working with leading media companies and help them understand how cloud can benefit, and at the same time, internally working with our product and engineering and explain to them what media is. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Larissa.
So Proximus is the Belgian, former Belgacom, so the local telco in Belgium, largest telco there, and we are running the media division, which is both a broadcaster as well as a service provider. And
thank you very much.
Thank you. And the service providing part here as well is very closely linked to parts in the group that are now looking into artificial intelligence and how we can run this within our operations.
Okay. Darren.
So my name is Darren Long. I look after the sports integration, and my project I've been doing for the last year is looking after that transition from BT Sport into TNT Sport. So I work for Warner Bros. Discovery. And so I've had the pleasure of working on that project for the last year. Yep. But obviously I work within the GT&O team, which is the global technology and operations team at Warner Bros. Discovery.
Okay, thank you.
And hi, I'm Floriane Magera. I'm a innovation equipment. So I work as a computer vision engineer. So I work on programs to analyze images. And so my work at EVS has included enabling augmented reality, for instance, video assistant referee product.
So look, arguably, the very term artificial intelligence, I mean, it sounds a bit sci-fi. We've heard about it for years. it's quite emotionally loaded, right? And actually, not all of it's especially intelligent. A lot of the kind of just more reactive software actually doesn't have any intelligence at all, so perhaps we shouldn't be using that word because it scares people. But what I want to find out is where we are today. We'll talk about where we're going. We'll talk about risks, the effect on people. But let's find out what everyone's doing today. So Anshul, what are you doing today? What have you deployed AI on? What have you left it in charge of?
At Google, Google has, since I would believe 2015, has always been an AI-first company.
Yep.
So I think most of the Google services, including the 8 or 9 apps, which have over 1 billion users, we all have been interacting with AI. Maybe it is as simple as when you're searching for something, it automatically completes it. When you're typing an email, it automatically suggests a reply. So in every way, when you're looking at using Google Maps, for example, coming here, it'll predict the right direction. So there's a lot Google has been working on.
Sure. And have you brought that into your area, which is the sort of broadcast media solutions? I mean, are you using AI specifically in that area?
Yeah, so even
for clients.
Yeah, so two things. So from Google point of view, on our own properties, like YouTube, for example, there's a lot of media, and then there's a lot of new innovations with AI you already see for like automatic chaptering of videos, etc. But also at the same time, now for last few years, we've been working with leading companies and to actually bring AI into their business processes. So we have large customers around the world who are utilizing our technology to bring better service that is assisted by AI for their users.
And in what sort of, so if you think about the whole life cycle of a production, well, even from ideation, but through to filming and production, and you've got post, which bits of that process are you deploying it on?
So there's a lot of innovation that has already been happening in the area of direct consumer when the apps, so for example, recommendation engine, understanding the user better, what they might want to do when users are searching for pieces of video to predict what they are actually looking for. There's a lot of innovation happening there. Understanding the user behavior, churn, whether they're liking the service, good work happening there. On the back-end processes, also, there's some interesting work that is happening, for example, to subtitle the content better.
Right.
And yes, there is, and maybe we'll come to that, is AI there to do the whole thing? No, but can it assist the whole process in some ways and simplify and hasten it? Absolutely. So we have customers using it for translating the videos into multiple languages, creating metadata in different languages, etc.
So, I mean, there's always a mismatch, isn't there, with what you experience as a consumer and then, you know, working in the media. Perhaps you're in an edit suite. You get very used to asking, you know, putting something into Google, you get a response or whatever, or your Netflix suggesting what you should watch next. But you're in an edit suite and you're thinking, well, what shot shall I put in next? Or in my hundreds of hours of rushes, why can't I just do a Google search? And are you bringing some of that consumer stuff across to us in the media? Or?
Yeah, actually, and we had, and this is open customer we talk about, we were partnered with Fox Sports, for example, and they always said that when my editors have to create a new footage of, let's say, all the goals that Harry Kane scored or Messi scored when he was there, they actually go to YouTube, find out when in the game that actually goal happened, then they come back and look for that video and find out the exact moment. So the point was, why can't I do Google-like search on my archive? So they are already utilizing technologies like that.
Right, okay, interesting. Larissa, where are you using AI?
So for us, it's really early times, right? So we are at the moment very much looking on we're in the process, can we use it? And it's more about like really introducing it with all the different kind of people with within the organization. So one thing that while we are compared to Warner, a smaller broadcaster, definitely for us, it's really the key that we can optimize all of the operations there. So what we did, because we have internally in the group, it's called Proximus Media, which is a cybersecurity and AI department that are really focusing on this. So what they asked us for was providing them with use cases that we need within the media space, such as you mentioned, we we're in Belgium, we're a duolingual country. We get, for example, Dutch subtitles, but they are not Flemish, so we got to Flemishize them. We have French subtitles, there's some adjustments. So it's about that really using AI to implement that. So this is just a
And am I right
example.
in thinking that there's actually a legal requirement to produce all the programming in 2 languages?
That is correct. We're the only ones doing it for whole of Belgium within that, being like telco spanning across both parts of the country. Usually have them separate. So we do every program in 2 languages, sometimes 3, because we have German as well. And sometimes we have Champions League, and then you do English as well. So that it's about that really for where can we optimize that, and where can we find things that we can quickly install within the operation. So this is where we are, is doing initial steps on the implementation there, and it's really about getting everybody aware of, look, there is this new thing, there is this new friend, you don't see it, but it's there and it's doing something. Yes?
Okay, that's an interesting way of looking at it. The new friend. We'll come on to that when we look at some of the people aspects. Darren, what's your deployment of AI currently?
Well, one point which I'd like to, it's not new. This is something that has been around for an awful long time. I mean, if people remember a company called Quantel many years ago, they had a thing called Frame Magic, and Frame Magic was analysing each of the individual images to see how much storage they were using and whether or not they were using a number of bits of storage within the content that they could actually reuse again. So I think the important thing to say is that thanks to ChatGPT and obviously Google's Bard and various other things, is that good advertisement at the moment, and I think what we need to do is take a little bit of stock of that and actually go, okay, fine, where is it we can start applying better technology within our productions? And I think it's important to understand that we have been doing this for a long time, but now's the opportunity to supercharge that and actually try and be a little bit braver within production and actually change and evolve what we're doing and how we're doing it. Dynamic offside lines, being around for a very long time. Computer vision and actually analysing what is in the picture has been around a very long time. I think what's exciting now is about combining all of those processes and streamlining it. And I think that's, for me, where we'll all get the benefit. I think at the moment it's very piecemeal. It's like join little bits together and maybe we'll enhance what we do. But in the future, that end-to-end solution to give the creative person a lot more tools is what's going to be interesting.
So what's in common then between what you're saying, Larissa, what you were saying, and Anshul, is that the primary deployments there are for the laborious tasks, the tasks no one really wants to do, searching, having to translate information and just generate a whole load of captions, not especially creative process, it's just a necessary process. But you're working in a different area, Floriane. You're not working on the laborious tasks with AI. You're working on telling new stories that, and ways of telling stories that we've not been able to do up to now. So tell us a bit about AI and new stories.
So actually, there are 2 big trends that we are working on at EVS. And the first one is, starting from a production, there is a fixed amount of equipment. So you have a definite set of cameras with specific lenses, specific frame rates. And there is a big part of our job is trying to overcome the limitation of your equipment. So for instance, with extra motion, we can turn any camera into a super slow-mo camera. And we are working on other types of effects that make live replays even look better. So if you go on our booth, you'll see a new demonstration of an intelligent digital zoom that has been done in my team. And so
this is creating new picture information that didn't exist.
So it's not creating new images.
Okay.
It's creating, so the intelligent zoom is creating a new camera, a virtual camera that is a close-up camera. And you can choose to follow the action, have one more close-up to follow the action on screen, or you can tell it, I want to follow that particular person, and it will do so a long time. So it helps you, as a director, tell more stories at the same time. Okay. So this is the kind of stuff that we're working on, and this is the first trend. The second one is help our customers to better leverage the huge amount of media assets that they have. So in our media asset manager, IPDVIA, we are showcasing on the booth. You should check this. I
will.
There is a demonstration of a search based on text and even not written text, based on speech, in order to index.
So is this kind of Siri, find me all the missing cutaways, kind of, and close up?
So usually media asset managers, they work on keywords. So it's kind of interfacing a prompt. So please give me all the goals of Messi this year, and it will output you all the shots of the goals of Messi this year. And something else that is really interesting, of course, is not using text, it's using images. So for instance, if there is someone in the screen, you don't know who that is. You don't know who that is, so you can type its name. But you click on his face, and you find all the appearance of that person in the media assets. So that's the kind of stuff that we demonstrate now.
Yeah. And again, speeding up time, giving you access to information that would either take too long in live production or would take a lot more people to be searching through everything. I want to just look at the people aspects. We'll have a bit of a kind of thought experiment about where we might go with everything shortly. But what are the people aspects? So as you've been experimenting with AI or deploying it, and I'm thinking specifically, Darren, Larissa, in replacing existing workflows, what has been the effect on the people? What have people said? What are they scared of? What's the human element?
Thank you. Sorry.
It's an interesting question because I'm not sure if what they're scared of is change, because all of us go through that change process. And I think what I find with people is that you will always go through that. It's a fact. It's just life. You know, none of us really like change. But actually, when we experience change and then see the opportunity and see what we can do with it, then I'll give you for instance, you know, a previous role I did was very much, we looked at scheduling, very low level way of obviously placing key assets into a schedule. And we looked at movies and we looked at some sports rights. And effectively what we found is that we could easily effectively mimic somebody spending hours effectively filling the schedule. Not editorializing it, but just filling the schedule to make sure it worked really well with the content. And initially, people were very worried about that because they thought, well, actually, that was going to cause them a problem. But they then quickly realized it gave them an opportunity to editorialize a lot better, but actually have the machine to actually place the content into the running order. And if you watch the things like Sky Movies now, that's done with computer vision. So effectively, it's just analyzing what's in the archive. It's looking at what opportunities to monetize that content and effectively then placing it in the key areas. And when we ran it concurrently with the human, we realized that actually it was more or less the same. And what was different, you couldn't say why. But initially, there was a pushback. But then actually, as people realized what the benefit was and the opportunity to be much more sort of creative around how to editorialize, other people's roles changed. And I think this is the important thing to remember. I think people will always worry about the things we hear. There's no doubt about it. Things will change and job roles will change. It's fact. But the good news is that it's going to create a much more highly skilled workforce that has many more opportunities in front of it. But we've got to go through that change. And it's the fact, it's not going to stop. No one can stop this thing. And I think it's important that leaders out there really push their workforce to embrace it, make them understand there's nothing to be feared about, but it's an opportunity to grow opportunities in the companies, in the workforce. And so for me, that's what I've seen. I've seen people initially fearing it, but then actually embracing it.
So this is about change management, mindset.
Yes.
And so on. Yeah. Anshul, Larissa, what do your companies do to try and bring people along with that?
I think we're, as mentioned, I think for us, because we're on the technical side, we have the technology part, and then there is the operational part. So this is where people on the operational side probably have that biggest fear of, oh my God, is my job going to change and all this. So I think there it's really, and what we're trying to do is kind of really talking, thinking about, hey, can you think about something where, you could actually make things more efficient, right? And we have, at the moment, for example, a project, we got to reprocess almost 10 years of content. So nobody wants to do this, right? So you really think like, oh, that would be a great use case. How could we find something where AI can reprocess that, where can it tag it, do all of these different things. So in putting it also there, so creating the ideas and getting the ideas from the people working on it, it helps to kind of like initiate that discussion, that communication. And then I think it's just trying it out. In a small thing, we're going to introduce something soon where we will just have a small bit. We will tell everybody, look, this is an AI now, and he is working with you. And you will kind of see, hey, you can't see him, but he's going to detect patterns that none of us could see, right? And this will also allow us to do a bit more, to augment also the creativity that we have in certain jobs. And I think this is where, it's taking a while, but I think we can get them to adapt much more into the embracing state instead of the defensive state.
What would you recommend, Anshul? How do we bring people with us?
No, I think it's a valid point, and I think both of you clearly explained it. But I think I would say additional perspective is that even working with some of our customers, like I was talking about Fox, for example, the editors are still doing the editor's role, and this is just assisting them to do that role more better in some ways, right? Rather than just take a good amount of their time just looking for information, they're actually editing it. So yes, there is a little bit of fear and uncertainty of not knowing what is there, but once people actually utilize and see, with everything from technology, right? It's with every wave of technology goes through the early adopters, and then the mass majority use it.
So it's almost as if we should stop talking about job roles, but just lists of tasks. Yeah. Because every job involves different tasks. We have boring, repetitive tasks, we have logical tasks, we have judgment tasks. And I suppose we need to keep the judgment ones for the human beings, but all the kind of logical, repetitive. And then if we start looking at tasks, not job roles, then it's perhaps easier to have the conversation with someone who's just been used to a certain list of tasks about evolving that list, but keeping some ownership somewhere. But this is about the form of AI, really what we're talking about here, that's just super fast processing. It's probably quite reactive. Of course, a big part of AI is where there's an element of generative, where, so you were talking, Floriane, about virtual camera positions that don't exist, but interpolating that from the other camera information. You can imagine situations where, and I'm not talking about the sort of generative AI where it will imagine someone's face and so on, but corrective generative AI. So you can imagine you were filming an interview and someone walked in front of the camera as the guest said something interesting. Now before we would cut away to something and we would cut back, but what would now if we could say to the AI, or just correct that bit where the camera wobbled or the person walked in front of frame. And then we've got to correct that person's face, saying words that they did say, but we never saw them say them. At what point does that then become a trust issue? Because we're only doing it to correct what happened, but we never captured it. Or you can imagine trying to cut between two parts of an interview. At the minute we would use a cutaway, but you could say to the AI, make that look like they said that as two sentences, one after the other. So you get into a grey area here of what is just corrective, but what is generative. And then there's a trust issue. Where are you? So I suppose this, Floriane, this is a good question for you to start with. If you're doing a super slow-mo and the AI is hallucinating the frames in between, it's hallucinating frames that you assume happened, but we never captured them.
Yeah.
And the ball could have touched the ground momentarily in those hallucinated frames.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
but
how do we approach this? Because it's not real.
Well, yeah, and we use Hawkeye for tennis for years now, and we trust the little mark where the ball got out of the field. You know, the Hawkeye for tennis. We trust the little area where Hawkeye says that the ball landed. Can you be sure about that? Because I'm not.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yep.
So, yeah, that's the problem with hallucinating frames, is that it's a question, can we use that to use for refereeing? And the FIFA answered. They allowed to use virtual replays for the offside line at the World Cup this year. So this is now accepted. And
it is interesting because the old tradition, well, it's probably a century-old tradition of using the cutaway and then just editing the sound of what someone was saying in an interview over a cutaway or a walking shot or a noddy or something. We're trying to give one impression when actually it's not the true impression, but we accept it. And now if AI does it, we have a problem with it. Darren?
Well, I think it's fascinating, this bit, because what our eye sees and what we believe is a really interesting conundrum, because every camera angle, as we know, is slightly different and slightly off the ball, and so you can't always tell. And many years ago, I worked with Hawkeye when they first came out on this problem around, did it hit the bat, did it hit the cricket stumps, or where was the ball in flight? And initially, without a doubt, a lot of people didn't believe it. But what I'm really pleased about is we need something where sorry if this mic's a bit funny now. We need something to be able to tell us a story during the game. And I think, to your point, if you look at Wimbledon and of their use of Hawkeye, for instance, and where the ball is, they were up in arms when they said they weren't going to use it. So actually, we've all got used to it and we've all accepted it because it's the only way that we can believe that the ball was either in or out of the line. And I think this is just adoption, change, an opportunity to tell another story. And I think this is what we've got to accept. And the offside line's a classic point. And certainly all the VAR stuff that we see now on TV, you either hate it or love it. But the fact of the matter is we're now getting used to it. And I think this is where the adoption of AI is going, which is people are understanding that there has to be a way to tell a story, and that's the opportunity in using some of this technology.
But the context of all this content everywhere is changing. So television for many years on the news has had to put a caption up that says actor's voice, reconstruction, and so on, so that we don't think the pictures we're watching were actually the real murder scene or whatever, because then you would think, well, why didn't the camera crew stop it? Are we going to have to do that with AI? Do we need certification?
100%.
Do we need to say these frames were not generated by humans?
Yes.
So for the interpolated frames in between, we don't put a caption on a cutaway at the minute in an interview and go, this was non-sync. It was recorded 4 minutes after the interview finished. We don't put a caption up. So do we need to put up a caption that says, not real? I'm not sure, and there's going to be a big debate here.
I think that for sports, well, there's not much damage besides money. But and I think that people will be mad if we write them, this is a fake image in or interpolations. But for information, I think it's really absolutely needed. But the question is, do we need to do it every time, or for essential matters?
And this is perhaps a small part of a much bigger question about, do we need to verify what's real generally, because not just of AI, but the fact that, social media, fake news, and so on.
I don't know if that works. But when we started with GoLine and all the different technologies, what was happening, the commentator was saying, oh, and there is this new GoLine technology. So you started with getting all of the viewers familiar with these new things. So we actually had already these introductions. So now when we're going a step further, we do different kind of analyses. The people that are telling the story at the end, because yes, we have pictures, but at the end there is a storyteller, which is the commentator or somebody in the studio. That one then takes this over and will help to, kind of bring it over to the viewer that, look, there is something, this is something we generated probably with AI, but it helps you to understand much more of what we saw, if that was right, if that was a foul. And I think there it really is a support of the storytelling, whether what Floriane is explaining of the different angles and we can follow, but the storytelling stays the same. And then it just becomes part.
Let's look forward, because this is going to be an ongoing debate. Okay, this is going to rumble for years as AI becomes more capable. Where will that capability end? Is there what is not going to happen, or what is going to happen next? Let's have some predictions. Over to Google.
I'm not in the prediction game, but it's hard to say. So it's fair to say we are in first 5 minutes of a 90-minute game with AI, right? So we're still trying to figure out. There's a lot of learning across everyone, from the companies to people how to use technologies, from governments, regulators. Everyone is trying to understand what. Because AI, at the end of it, it's a tool, right? The tool can be used for good, and some people might try to use. And then that's where the whole societal question comes, right? What is right? What is wrong? What is acceptable? What is not? In some ways. So I think we all going to your point, you're 100% right. We're going to work through these answers for next few years. I think they'll become more mainstream. But also, I think over a period of time, what I at least believe is that more people will see in their daily life how much actually AI can simplify their job, their life. Organizing, like my son's 11th birthday party, we were thinking of few ideas. Is a lot easier for me to just ask Bart to say that, give me some. So I think more people interact with it, it will be I think it'll be a lot more comfort. But yes, there are a lot of bigger questions as society we need to answer.
And look, the labour-saving argument, I think, is very, very clear. And we've covered that when we talked about roles and tasks. I saw a great statistic in a talk somewhere the other day where the amount of effort that goes into agriculture now per unit of output is a tiny fraction of a percentage of what it was 100 years ago, when it was very much manual labour and so on. So there is a big productivity thing here. But then, of course, as we're talking about generative or fakes that copy and so on, and then we consider things like the actors' strike in America, where they are absolutely petrified of recording something once, and the AI then continues to churn that out. So they want reassurance, and they want contractual reassurance. Now, we haven't got time to go into the whys and wherefores of that. That's also a much bigger debate around kind of residuals and streamers and so on, which is outside the scope of our session. But there is that fear of what might happen and where it might go. I'm going to ask you a question, Floriane, because you're the one experimenting with this stuff. When are we going to see the first AI movie or comedy, or when is it going to just do the whole thing for us? Or is it?
Tomorrow, yeah. No, but that's a very difficult question. Yeah, first, about generative AI. It's not that it's a revolution that is a scientific revolution. It's that it's making AI accessible to everyone. So ChatGPT, everyone in the room can use it. Whilst the model underlying GPT, which was already giving terrifying results, really good results, it's been there since years. So what is it doing is that it's becoming accessible to all. And so I think that indeed it will allow people that do not have the means to create movies to make some in the near future. But it will be low-cost movies, like they cannot afford actors, they cannot afford, I don't know, editing skills. Well, they come up with something. So if you have a story to tell, soon you'll be able to tell it. But you, as a director, you will still be telling stories. You won't be replaced by a generative AI.
So it somehow democratizes the means of production, but it doesn't necessarily democratize the years of skill and creativity and learning that a creative has had to go. Where is the gap? Where is the gap between what we can do as human beings and AI? What do you? Is there always a critical difference?
So I like the part of the strikes of the actors in Hollywood, because the questions that we are asking is: do you think that an AI will be able to act in the near future? So to mimic emotions, to feel emotion stuff. And I don't think that we are close to that kind of stuff anytime near. Because if there is one thing that is really, I don't know, already as humans, we are like so bad at this. How can you produce a data set that labels emotions when you, as a human, you have to know someone else for years in order to detect complex emotions on their face? So that's something that is not ready to happen, I think. So Olivia Colman, great actress, she will always have a job, and her AI copy puppeting her, she will be terrible. So it won't work as she does.
Now that's interesting, because there was a similar quote at the Edinburgh Television Festival in the UK a few weeks ago, and a program maker called Louis Theroux did the key lecture, and I'm just going to quote your line because I thought this is really sharp analysis. And he said, "We've all seen the amazing results AI can produce. In a few years, it might be able to write a passable sitcom or action movie, so much like you're saying, sort of imitative. But what it won't be able to do is take risks. Because risks involve danger, and there's no danger for machines. Risk involves feeling the possibility of humiliation, embarrassment, and failure." And that really taps into something. You're talking about an actor really putting themselves on the line and taking a risk, and actually AI has nothing at stake there, does it? So I thought that was very, very interesting. Last topic, and then we're going to ask the audience a question in a second, about being responsible and advice to people in the room. So what have you learned? How do we go forward with the right mindset where we're going to protect people and we're going to do right by people as we go on this adventure? Any thoughts and tips?
I can start off, but I think on responsibility, like we were just discussing this, we're still early into this, but
yep.
There's a huge amount of responsibility across everyone who is using this technology and making it in fairness and consuming it. But I think a couple of things I would point out is like they are consumer tools like ChatGPT or Bard or whatever else. And then they are things you're doing as a business where you are creating content, creating movie. I think first difference is you can't mix the two. I mean, if you're asking Bard or ChatGPT to write a poem, a love letter to your wife, it's okay if it hallucinates and comes up with things. But you don't want to do that when you're analyzing the financial report of your company.
No, that would be a bad time to hallucinate.
Yeah. So I think making that difference is important. And I think that is one big thing. And also making sure your data is secure, right? If you are actually asking Bard or ChatGPT or whatever tool, it's not actually... that information is not misused in other ways also. Your data stays your data. I think it's going to be increasingly important. Whatever you're doing using AI, is it responsible? Are you causing any harm to people or to, in general, to the environment?
Yeah.
That is a very important part. Like some of the use cases we were talking about over here, like for example, if you have a movie and then you are identifying names of people who are there in that movie, is what... maybe as an AI experiment, it might look okay to do, but what other privacy concerns are you causing? So I think looking at it holistically is going to be increasingly.
Okay, so holistically. So Darren, if you were doing a PowerPoint for some of your, some people in production and going, right, there's a big change coming, we're bringing in AI, what key words and themes would you want in that PowerPoint for those people?
Well, the key one is trust, ultimately, and ensuring that what we're doing isn't changing our trust with the customer. It's about evolving and ensuring that actually, however we use these tools in future, we are still going to continue to have that relationship where there is a trust between those organizations. And I think we've got a long journey to go. And without a doubt, and I hate to use the word regulation, there will need to be some, without a doubt. But I think it's an opportunity as well as a hindrance of, but I do think when you stand up with your PowerPoint presentation, ultimately it's about how do we sell and tell the best story to our customers and ensure that the trust remains, because ultimately, it doesn't take long for people to find out that actually that trust is broken, and actually when that trust is broken, then that organization will fail.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a journey. We've got a lot of learning to do. Without a doubt, there's going to be some mistakes along the way. I think that's okay. We are going to make those mistakes. I think, unfortunately, and you saw it with ChatGPT and the integration of Bing, they suddenly stopped it because they made a few mistakes and decided that they were going to stop for a while of that integration between the two, and then obviously ensure that actually everyone's safety and everything was correct. If we continue that way, that's great. You're always going to get bad actors out there who will actually obviously try and harness the power of that. But I think that shouldn't stop us looking at the opportunities, and the opportunities are huge, both for the businesses, but equally for customers as a whole. So I think that's what's the important thing is, let's just keep going with the great storytelling. And I think we talked about this today about, is it going to replace the human intellect? Maybe in 30 years' time, possibility. But equally at the moment, I think it's an opportunity to give people new tools to just tell great stories. And that's what it's going to continue being.
Larissa?
I think there is some areas which we should exclude, which is, employee data, kind of areas of trust that you got to make sure and be really transparent. So when you start communicating, that nobody thinks, hey, there's this AI now running and it's going to look at my performance over the years. All these kind of, very critical, very sensitive things, as well as, if you have customers, that you are also, because you can't see it, very transparent on anything you're doing. Next one is also, thank you. Next one is also that you really start to give them small habits where they can use it. So everybody really going from the infrastructure team, that's really the big guys on computer science, but they're, by the way, very often the most afraid ones because they know more than the rest of us. But these guys, so that we start with small things, but also always limit where we apply it and make absolutely sure we get all of the cybersecurity applies, set the boundaries, and make sure everybody understands this. So it's really a big dialogue, and it's not something that should come from the top, but really from the bottom.
So making sure everyone can understand is education then.
Very much.
And it's interesting. I mean, I wonder, we're going to need a lot of people coming into the industry who get this for these new roles and for supervision and stuff. I mean, is there an issue there? Have we got a deficit of those new skills? Just very briefly, where are we on skills?
I gotta take this one. Okay. Well, I think that. Well, we really need everyone to try to understand, well, at least have a basic understanding of what computers are, because we are using them every day. Mm-hmm. And I think that in the same way, I think that you should be aware of what the artificial intelligence tool you're using, well, at least deep learning, like generative AI, you should know what it is trying to do. So how it was trained, just a bit, just a few stuff, in order to understand correctly what it is doing and on which data set it was trained. So that's really important. So if you know that ChatGPT was trained on the whole documents that it could find on the internet, maybe you wouldn't ask it to, I don't know, solve very important questions for you. Well, because you know that you're getting at first the average answer on the internet.
Okay, so that's transparency as well.
Yes.
Being clear on data sets and so on. Anything else to add, Anshul?
No, I think it's some of the points you mentioned. I think it's in general, with AI using tools like this, it's grounding, right? It needs to be grounded into something when you're using it for the use cases where you're making actual business decisions. And yes, so that is one thing. But also on the skills gap, I would say, yes, there's a skills gap. But also, I would say not everyone needs to know how AI is created. But everyone should I think the skill that we as people in society will need to develop a lot more. And some of the questions you're asking is the whole critical reasoning, right? Just because you've seen it on the internet, it doesn't mean it's true. Yeah. I think it is true now, but I think it's going to be increasingly true. And I think that by itself, yes, it's not so much linked to AI, but I think being able to, from kids onwards, you can use AI to do your homework. So it doesn't let you think.
It's that classic analogy that actually you don't need to be a mechanical expert on how a car works, but with training you can still be a great driver. So I mean, people aren't going to suddenly all need to learn code, are they? But I think having a literacy with it is going to be important. So we've got a question for the audience now. Can we put the slide up? If you do a quick scan of that, you'll come through to the Menti page. It's very, very quick, and it does work. We've tested it. Please take part. And then you'll be presented with a multiple choice question. Please make your selection, and then in real time, we'll see what you all think. The 5 possible answers are extremely positive. Will AI bring significant improvements and benefits to our industry? 2, mostly positive on balance. C, mixed. D, mostly negative. Or E, extremely negative. Just give you a second or two just to scan that and take your vote. Okay.
The old-fashioned way.
Yeah, let's just say, no, there we go. There we go. Okay, that's pretty encouraging, isn't it? So, all positive, but mainly centred on mostly positive. I think that's pretty encouraging. Anyone surprised by that or relieved by that?
This is about opportunity, and I think everyone in the room who works in this industry understands opportunity. Yeah. And I think, when you look at a world where it's getting faster, quicker, we need tools to be able to do that. And I think this will give us those tools and that opportunity to tell great stories. Yeah. And so I think, looking at that, I'm glad that people are positive. If anything, you probably shouldn't be at the show if you're not. But I think there are some amazing opportunities for all of us in the future, and about how we, make, shape, and share content. And that, for me, is what's really exciting about the show.
Okay. Well, look, thank you all very much. Quick round of applause for our panelists this afternoon. That's just about it for the first panel, but I've got one more thing. Don't forget to join us in a few minutes at 4 o'clock for our second panel, Cloud, Green or Grey. But final thing, just for a bit of fun, I asked ChatGPT to produce 3 sentences on the most obvious thing that AI will never be able to do. It's a really cute answer, I have to say. It says, one of the most obvious things that AI will never be able to do is to experience genuine human emotions. AI lacks the capacity for emotional consciousness, empathy, and the depth of feeling that defines human emotional experiences. Whilst AI can simulate emotional responses based on data and algorithms, it fundamentally lacks the subjective, lived experience that makes emotions uniquely human. That's pretty impressive for a bunch of data, isn't it? And this is good news, because actually we're all in the business of emotion working in the media. So I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you very much. See you at 4 o'clock.